So I'm here to tell you that a broken heart is not the end. It's just the beginning of a different adventure. I was fortunate to grow up in Southern California participating in a whole lot of different sports. It started with swimming, and then soccer, and then the high school track team. When I moved to Lake Tahoe, I got involved with skiing. I spent a lot of time, ended up on the national freestyle ski team. And then in my late teens, I started windsurfing and eventually ended up doing World Cup events. Turns out that's probably what saved my life. But one thing I never could figure out during all those training sessions is I couldn't figure out how to take my own pulse. I had no idea how those kids in PE could put their hands on their wrist and come up with a number like 72. I'm like, don't know where they got that. But it couldn't be a heart problem because it's racing. I can see it pounding in my chest. It's just nobody ever told me it was supposed to beat regularly. So when I was 18 years old, I headed in for knee surgery to kind of clean up the mess I'd made windsurfing and skiing. And while I was there, for the pre-op surgery test, I finally got to have my first EKG. Now, as the little strips were spitting out of the machine, the nurse's eyes are getting really big. Because it turns out that I had arrhythmias they had never seen before. So she calls in the cardiologist, and they're taking a look at the arrhythmia strips, and my life changed right then. I went from being a healthy 18-year-old windsurfer skier to a heart patient headed to the coronary care unit. I spent the next 30 days at UCSF, University of California, San Francisco, while the doctors did all sorts of tests and procedures to try and diagnose my condition. Turns out they were pretty amazed at how well my body tolerated a heart rate of 270 beats per minute, which explains why I couldn't take my pulse. But it also, they had not seen arrhythmias like this, and they tried different medications. Nothing was working. They kind of looked at me and said, wow, you know, you were born with this. We don't know why you lived as long as you did, and honestly, we don't know how long you'll live going forward. So I did what any reasonable 18-year-old would do. I'm like, well, live every day to its fullest, move to Maui and windsurf. The following year, I was invited to participate in an experimental procedure to have an AV ablation. So I was one of the first humans to go in and have doctors basically electrocute my AV node, rewired me, and I've been 100% pacemaker dependent since I was 19 years old. And this was a tough decision to do that, to decide, okay, I'm going to go in. I have no idea how this will feel. I don't know if this will work. I don't know if I'll ever be active again. I mean, I've been a competitive athlete my whole life. I don't know if I'll get to do this anymore. And then, of course, as a 19-year-old female at this point, I had no idea what a pacemaker was going to look like sticking out of my chest. Even more important, as a sponsored windsurfer, and I had a swimsuit sponsor, I didn't know if I was ever going to wear a swimsuit again, let alone be comfortable with people seeing my scars. So I did choose to have the surgery. And for me, that was the best choice because living and not taking toxic medication was kind of a good thing for me. And yes, the first pacemaker did stick out like a big pack of cigarettes. And I continued to windsurf and play volleyball and wear a swimsuit. But the odd thing, even today, is that I'm 100% battery operated. I have continued to participate in a lot of sports. I've just had to kind of change the sports I do. I went from sprint sports to endurance sports because the way that my pacemaker reads heart rate, it kind of can sense the oxygen utilization, muscle stimulation, and electrical impulses. So if I just take off fast, it feels like a tachycardia, so it shuts down. So I kind of ramp it up. I've had 6 pacemakers over the last 28 years. And that's actually what it looks like inside of me. And I can go through the airport. Doesn't set anything off. The thing that happened, though, is when I had to have my leads replaced. And the leads are wires that go into your heart muscle. Those had been in there for 20 years. And I had to have new ones put in. Originally, they tucked them in, left them there, put my pacemaker and wires on, I got a new network on the other side. What happened is that scar tissue, or I got an infection that brewed inside, and then they had to go in and they had to pull those old wires that had been in there for 20 years out of the heart muscle. So that twisting and tearing kind of created a bunch of scar tissue, which then blocked the blood flow around my heart. So you can see how on the right side it's nice and normal, a single flow of blood, and on the left side where the blockage was, the blood wasn't going where it needed to go. So at this point, I finally had to ask the question, am I really a heart patient? I mean, I'm a healthy athlete. I was just a girl with a bad electrical system, and we fixed it. And, then it's like, well, all right, I get the call from the doctor. He said to repair my vascular system, they're going to have to saw my chest open and do open heart surgery. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how do you prepare for open heart surgery? So I decided I needed a goal, because I just mentally rebelled against the idea of being a victim. So I called 3 friends of mine. We put together a relay team, and I picked a bike race out. And I figured, all right, I'll have 5 months. We'll get that done. The other thing I did, and this may have been more of a midlife crisis thing, but I was like, okay, if they're going to saw open my sternum, and then they're going to put me back together using twisty ties, I'd better go get some glamour shots so I can pretend I was really hot before the surgery. The day comes when you go into surgery, and the scariest thing, the most frightening thing for me is when you have that IV put in. And that's partly because once they do that, you're stuck, you're trapped, and it's really happening. And you have to trust that the doctors and the anesthesiologist and all of those people are going to let you wake up when this is over. So I did wake up, well, eventually. First you end up in ICU. And I don't remember much of that, but by day 2, today with open heart surgery, they actually get you up and moving pretty quickly. So they issue you kind of the standard heart pillow that you hold on to so you can cough and hold your chest together. By the 3rd day, I was actually feeling pretty good, kind of up and around. I was looking forward to getting out of ICU and over to a standard room and onto my training. Then things, well, I thought they were going so well. Until it turns out I told the nurse that I felt like I was getting the wrong kind of sick and something had shifted. And then I started swelling up and I couldn't open my eyes. And it turns out that I was bleeding internally because they had started me on the blood thinners, and the seals where they'd put a new vascular system in was leaking, and my chest cavity was filling up, and my lungs, I couldn't breathe. So finally at 3 a.m. in the morning, my vital systems crashed. And then we had to do a code blue emergency bedside surgery, and they had to start to let all the blood out. It took 11 units of blood and a high-performance transfusion machine to get me filled back up that night. And for the first time, it didn't matter how much I wanted to live. I didn't think there was enough left of me to make it through. And it turns out the doctors didn't think I was going to make it through that night either. So then I ended up back in the ICU. And because of the blood clots and the fluid that built up, I needed to have lung surgery, which actually hurts quite a bit more than open heart surgery if you ever have the choice. This was not how I expected to start my training. You can see the kind of down the middle where they'd cut me open. The scar on the right shoulder, the left shoulder, they actually took a rib out too. And then I have all these tubes in the back where they're draining fluids and blood out my back. So this was not where I kind of had planned on being. But I did have a post-surgery training plan, and it did start while I was in the hospital. I actually had a whiteboard in my room, and I was marking the laps that I was walking, because I had to walk before I could get back on my bike so I could, get to the race. My husband had a new job as support crew, pushing IV poles behind me. And once I got out of the hospital, I still had to stay in San Francisco for a couple of weeks. And I was in a hotel, and I was down in the hotel gym, and I'd go down there, and I'd get on the little spin bike, and I'd put it on level 1, and I'd start to pedal. And I'm doing my 4 minutes. And it's just killing me, because it's like most of the time I wouldn't even get up for 4 minutes. It's like, if you can't go do an hour and a half of a workout, why bother? Well, if I didn't do the 4 minutes, I wasn't going to be able to get back on my mountain bike, which is where I started, because that way if I happened to fall off or pass out, at least I wouldn't be in the street. I was on a trail and the cars couldn't run me over. So 2 months after getting out of surgery, I did enter my first 10-mile road bike event. And I wanted to wear a little sign that says, I'm not wimpy, I'm just recovering. But 5 months later, my friends and I, we did finish that race. Each one of us rode a 50-mile leg and crossed the finish line. And that was great. But then, soon after that, a couple of weeks, I had a friend of mine who called up and said, hey, I'd like you to coach me and help me train for a 100-mile century ride. I'm like, yeah, great. Oh, wait, shoot. I think I can do it. But I wasn't going to say no, and I wasn't, going to tell him I wasn't going to try. So we signed up to do a 100-mile century ride, the tour of Palm Springs, and I actually got to ride that and cross that finish line on my 1-year anniversary from heart surgery. So then I'm thinking, okay, cool. I've already got my first 100 miles out. It's only February. I'm going to do my real goal. I'm going to go after it. And this was to ride the whole 206-mile single-day bike race that goes from Logan, Utah to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, over 3 mountain passes. And I was going to do it solo. And this would be 14 months after open heart surgery and lung surgery, and kind of dying, sort of. So last month, or September of this year, I got to cross that finish line. And that, for me, that was such an amazing moment, because it meant that I was still me. I still had my life back, and I wasn't broken. And that was about as far away from being a heart patient as a person can get. So then it's like, all right, well, now what? What do I do with all this that I've learned and I've experienced? How do I give back? Because there were so many amazing people that made a difference that got me to that point. So I've gotten involved with a few organizations. One of them is CardioSmart, and this is actually the consumer education arm for the American College of Cardiology. One of the things that I found when I was kind of researching, all right, how do you prepare for heart surgery, is that there aren't any resources for active or athletes dealing with heart issues. Everything out there is all about how to stop smoking, how to lose weight, how to get more exercise, and how to eat right. But there's nothing out there that says, okay, here's how you don't hurt yourself and get too much exercise or break something, trying to reach your goals. So I've partnered up with them to do speaking events and things like that, and provide patient advice. Mended Hearts is just a great organization, and this is a patient advocacy group that allows people about to go in for heart surgery to talk to patients that have already been there. And then the third organization is Ironheart Racing, and this is the aspirational side of surviving heart disease. These are athletes and endurance events, people that are living life to the extreme. But between the three of them, it basically covers the entire patient experience. So I've learned a lot, and I've been through a lot, and it's given me a great perspective on life. And so there's a couple of things that I want to share with you that I've learned along the way. And one has to do with fear. We often don't pursue our goals because we're afraid of what might happen. So when I find myself in that situation, I step back and I say, okay, will this situation cause bodily harm? If that answer is no, which it pretty much is, it's like, all right, will this situation kill me? All right, no, it's just embarrassing, but it won't kill me. So that means, if we really break it down, the most we're afraid of oftentimes is a ding to our own ego and what other people might think if we fail. And that's kind of what keeps a lot of us from chasing and pursuing our dreams. The other thing I want to share is that the greatest gift we are all given is the opportunity to wake up every morning, put our feet on the floor, and decide what kind of person we want to be and what kind of life we want to live. It doesn't matter what happened yesterday, doesn't matter what might happen tomorrow. It's just who do we want to be today and what kind of difference do we want to make in this moment. And so I hope all of you choose to live amazing lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Stay up here for a second. So Heidi, talk to us about why after all this you decided to join J&J.
Well, actually, being a part of J&J is great. I've had an amazing career in technology, and I've had an opportunity to work and live all over the world. At this point in my career, to kind of take all the lessons learned and best practices that I've had the opportunity at other companies to do, but now be a part of a company that my passion for healthcare and as a kind of a professional patient. I mean, we didn't even talk about, I've had both knees rebuilt, my back fused, and kidney surgery from sports stuff. I'm an opportunity to be a part of a company that is so integral to my ability to do amazing things and have the life that I live through healthcare and the constant innovation. I mean, my first pacemaker and the experience 30 years ago and what the stitches look like. I mean, sutures and the size of pacemakers compared to what I now get to experience today in healthcare. There's such a big difference. The rehab is faster. The tools are better. Everything from the way Band-Aids work. I mean, in the good old days when you would have to go in for an EKG, they'd have to sand your skin off, shave your chest, and stick these things on. Well, today, now they're all disposable and easy, and it doesn't hurt nearly as bad. So I'm just thrilled to be a part of a company that, I'm your end consumer. So thanks for listening to my story.
Heidi, thank you so much.